We're live! We're live! Okay. Hello. Welcome to the Bogenrieder Variety Hour. It's me, Neil. Okay, so I'm sorry I started the stream early. I just wanted to get things ready and I wanted to make sure that everything was in place. So we're gonna be talking about kind of 7 books today. And I intentionally left 6 so we'd have something to talk about. Um, So we're gonna talk a bit about Eternals, the first issue. I got this free kind of behind the scenes copy that goes into the work of like the art and an interview with Gillen and Assad Ribic. And I'll talk a bit about that aside from that, but we'll talk a bit about that, and then we have 3 issues of Amazing Spider-Man. And depending on how chat responds, we're going to go through those 3 issues. We're going to go through all 3 of them at once. ASM 54.LR, ASM 55, and ASM 56. And I want to go through them all at once because they're essentially the conclusion slash continuation of one massive story arc. So I want those available just to go all at once. And then we will go to Iron Man number 5 by Chris Cantwell and Cafu, X-Men number 16 by Jonathan Hickman and Phil Noto, and Guardians of the Galaxy number 10 by Al Ewing and Juan Cabal, which is a King in Black tie-in. So if I can get some feedback in the chat about who wants to do which issues, I'm going to wait a minute and we will figure out where to go from there. I might start just with the Eternals issue because I think that's the one that no one cares about. So I had very little in the way of hopes for this book. Not because I don't like Gillen or Assad Ribic, but it kind of smelled of synergy for me because, the Eternals have their movie coming out in the next year or so. And, I'm a very cynical person at heart. And it just, the 37 covers, that to me was sort of a red flag because whenever a book has like 30 or 50 covers, like US Avengers, Black Cat, or this, that's usually just a big warning sign, a red flag to say, wait a minute, you might not want to do this. So going in, I was somewhat pleasantly surprised. The only problem I have with this book, and it's kind of a big one, so it's kind of a crippling one, is that one, Ribic reuses a lot of his own art. Like you can tell, there's several panels where Ribic uses the same reaction for Icarus, and the other one is that Gillen's kind of trying to be Hickman light. Like he has all these charts all over the place, not like all over the place, like in the middle of the book, but he has them at the beginning and kind of at the back of the book. And so that makes it feel like he's trying to do like a pseudo Hickman feel, and it doesn't really come off as well as Hickman. If you look at a book like House of X and Powers of 10, those are books that have much better use of charts, mostly because Hickman understands graphic design. And if I can find my copies of House of X, I want to illustrate this point to you. Unfortunately, I don't have the I don't have the issue of Eternals number 1 in front of me because I got mine digital. All I have with me is the behind the scenes stuff. It doesn't have the graphic design that comes with the actual issue itself. Here it is. Okay. So I have here my copy of House of X number 1, and I'm using this importantly to detail an important point. That because Hickman hired an actual graphic designer, Tom Muller, to design the aesthetic for House of X, there is a fundamental understanding of how color theory and font can be used to make the data that he is showing visually appealing. Whereas with Gillen, as much as I love the Tron movies, the light blue lines on black aesthetic, it doesn't work. Chris says no one really cares about Eternals anymore. That is unfortunately accurate. I need to make another background for this. But it does. I think that Eternals has appeal in a niche brand. But again, like you look at these pages, like these pages look interesting to read. I give a crap about the data because it looks nice to look at, and I can actually see myself looking at it. I just don't think that Eternals is a book that really has ties in, chart graphic design. It's just not curtailed to that type of brand design. So, and also we're going right into Thanos again. Um, Eternals has appeal for older fans. No new fans are really going to dig them. That is true. I guess in a weird way, because Aaron killed them off. The Eternals kind of have their niche filled by the X-Men, and for spoilers, this is one of the few books I'm going to like spoil a little bit. But the rule of this show is we dedicate the first half hour to talking spoiler free about the books, and then at the 30-minute mark, we're going to go into spoilers. So for anyone who doesn't want to be spoiled, at 8:30 Central, we are going into spoiler zone. So too bad. Yeah, you Thanos again, yawn. And I don't hate Thanos. I think he's a compelling villain, but I don't think that anyone's written him well aside from maybe Donny Cates in the last decade or so. So it definitely doesn't help that no one who has written Thanos writes him well, aside from like one guy, and even then he kind of jerks Thanos off. So that definitely hurts his appeal. I don't know. It feels like the Eternals angle has been covered. I don't know if there's really an angle that Eternals covers that X-Men and Inhumans don't. But it feels like Eternals is trying to lean hard into the new mutant status quo with like the resurrection protocols that they just keep coming back. And not like they haven't had that before, but it just feels like they're leaning a bit harder into it because that's been a major focal point of the Hicksmen runs. So chat, any picks for what we're doing for the first book? So reminder, we have 3 issues of Amazing Spider-Man, 54.LR, 55 and 56. Iron Man number 5, X-Men number 16, and Guardians of the Galaxy number 10. Those are your picks, chat. Tell me what you want to do first, because I am your vessel. So I know I've liked all the books that came out, but I like some more than others, and I'll get into why. Go with Spidey because that has the most. Okay. So I'm not gonna go plot point by plot point because I do want people to read these for themselves. But 54.LR I think did what it needed to do. Part of the problem I had with Part of the problem I've had with the .LR issues is that they didn't feel like they really connected into the main book as much as they should have. So it definitely felt like, they were 2 separate stories, but they needed to be together, especially because of the revelations of the stuff in the LR issues of the Mindscape. So this was where it finally felt like the plot points came together. Not as much as they should have, because Sin Eater kind of just is there. But, I think that it finally gave the plot points in the .LR issues some relevancy to the main story, which was needed. So good on them. I gotta say, I'm not a huge fan of Takeshi Miyazawa's art here. For reference, she shares art duties with Federico Vicentini, who I've really liked. And it does a good job of like character moments. I think Spencer has never really gone wrong with the characters he's writing. I think he's been rightfully criticized for dragging out the plot line of this story for too long and kind of not really hitting the mark all the time. But art-wise, this wasn't like the most amazing one. So I definitely think the Vicentini parts were the best. But, the Miyazawa parts weren't, actively horrible. They were in ASM 53.LR, where you had, like, Miles, like, an all-black suit, and, like, there's, like, these weird spots of red all over his costume. But, it wasn't that bad here. So, good on Vicentini for, getting it right. Very strong MJ moments. I also should point out that the issue, I'm not sure if it was padding or not, but it has 4 issues of, I believe, Spectacular Spider-Man number 200. Yes, written, and they should be acknowledged here, and they do it in the back, that it is Sal Buscema for art, Joe Rosen for letters, and Bob Sharon for coloring, and J.M. DeMatteis for editing it. So I'm glad they credited them, because I don't remember, because there was the Sins Prelude issue. If I can find it in my long box here. I have all my current stuff on standby in case I need it for reference. Here we go. I don't remember. I have to look. But they had pages from, I believe, Spec 138. 136. Peter Parker Spec Spider-Man Peter Parker Spider-Man number 136. So I guess I was wrong. It was just in the back. But, I wish that Marvel's editorial would put the artists that they're reprinting in the in the credits page with, the actual art teams. And this is a problem that 54.lr and, the ones that have reprinted art so far have had a problem with. Which, is not like, the most egregious thing they've done so far. But it was a very good use of Spec 200. And Spec 200 is arguably one of the most important Spidey stories ever written. I'd put it within at least maybe the top 10. Maybe even top 5. But, Best of Enemies has a lot of significance to the Kindred storyline because of the reveal in number 50 and number 53, kind of. But the relevance of that plotline to these characters and what's going on is important. So I'd recommend if they ever make a DeMatteis Spec Omnibus, I recommend picking that up or picking it up on like Comixology or something, because that's an important story. And if you're really liking Spencer's run, you'll really kind of need that for stable ground. AS55, this really wasn't the conclusion to Last Remains that Marvel was billing it as. Not really a spoiler, but the story doesn't really end here. And doesn't really even end in issue 56 either. Sorry, I burped. but I was thinking to myself, well, okay, so it's the end of the Last Remains storyline, yeah? But it doesn't end in this story. It ends on a cliffhanger. And admittedly, it ends on a very good cliffhanger because it had people losing their minds, and this issue was going for like $20 on the speculator market. I think I have to check my Facebook messages, but I think Anime Hunter, who's a friend of mine, he told me that the book was going for about $50 on eBay because of the cliffhanger at the end. Long story short, a Pumpkin Bomb basically guaranteed the book going on the speculator market, and they're going for a second printing. Very good second printing cover so they're taking this cover, which I think is poster worthy. This is a wonderful cover by Pat Gleason, and Gleason has been a wonderful addition to this book since ASM 32. I'm one of the few people who actually has liked him since 32, but that's just me. But yeah, I think the only problem with this issue was that they baited us by saying, like, oh, the solicits from when it was really, I think the solicits were in September of 2020. They're like, you're gonna look at Peter Parker differently, you're gonna look at Spider-Man differently, the fallout from Kindred is devastating, and then that doesn't happen. Marvel solicitations, they're not well known for telling the truth. But this felt like an absolute lie. Pat Gleason and Nick Spencer are a genuine dream team for me. There's added pages for no cause, which I do appreciate, but they're just like black pages with no dialogue. So it's very confusing why they added those 2 pages. I guess just for like a cinematic appeal. But I genuinely I liked the issue. I'd give it a B+, maybe an A-. just because I wish they had answered a few more questions. And that leads into ASM 56, because ASM 56 is kind of the issue that answers more questions than issue 55 did, and that was the last issue of the Last Remains story arc. This is the Last Remains post-mortem. And this one is the most recent, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but it answers a lot of, lingering questions about what's going on, and it begins a few more plot lines and follows up on a few that have been abandoned since then. Marvel being deceptive. Next, you'll say they have a variant cover problem. That is true. Yeah, they do have a variant cover problem, and they are deceptive marketers. I guess ASM is lucky because it's a good book. It's just not the book they advertise it as. Like, if you look at the GOG issues, ASM 41 to 43. They spend an entire issue on GOG, and I think it's one of the best arcs in Spencer's run, by the way. I hate that cowlick in the back of my head. It has very little to do with Spider-Man and Boomerang. In fact, it's mostly centered on GOG as a character, but they advertise it as like a Spider-Man Boomerang story. But there's an excellent... This issue is an excellent follow-up to 55 because it takes the ending of 55 and completely recontextualizes it, which is something that Spencer has been phenomenal at doing since he started this run, is taking like storylines and then recontextualizing them as time goes on. But this is like an immediate follow-up. I do like the use of Spot in this book, because if you read the preview, and this is kind of a light spoiler, Spot's in the book, and they use him very effectively. And I love when, and aside from Spot being one of my favorite, lower tier villains, they use his powers very effectively, which I always find very wonderful in terms of giving these characters a moment to shine. They follow up very nicely on all of the plot points that ASM 54 and 55 laid down in kind of converged in 55, but this time we get some actual genuine conclusions. I gotta say, there is one page that drove me up a wall, and it was this one where it's like a 6-panel grid where Norman is just staring. He's just staring. It's a Tom King page. Great reaction images, though. Once I get the digital edition downloaded on my tablet, I'm going to screenshot most of these and make them reaction images. The difference, I think, in this one, from being a Tom King page, is that at least Norman has context for doing this. Like, he's staring around, making sure no one can hear him. And, like, he breathes in, and then he begins talking. And I think that was a much more effective, and the difference is that he emoted. Norman emotes in this. BoobTube Gaming! You're Eben! Thank you for being Eben. Okay. But I do think that, this should have been billed as the final issue of Last Remains, because this answers more questions than 55 did. And granted, this cover is fucking ballin', but, what up, dude? I'm doing good. I go back to Austin in a week, so... Oh, Chris! Thank you for hosting the stream! Yeah, baby! Fuck yeah! Okay, so, yeah, I would recommend, now that everything has come together... Also, Carly Cooper is in this issue. Everyone's least favorite character. I'm the only one that ever lets her do anything, or that ever lets her be a character. But there's two characters here that follow up on. We follow up on Carly Cooper and Overdrive, who were in ASM 45, I believe, or 46. No, it was 45, and I guess a little bit of 46. But they follow up on that plot point, and then the Randy Robertson Aunt May Feast plot point, along with the feminist syndicate from issues 26 through 28. Carly Cooper, you say? Casada and Slot just creamed their pants at that mention. You know what? I don't. I understand why people don't like Carly Cooper. I don't hate her. I do think that this issue gives her something to do that isn't just like the residual of I'm Peter Parker's ex-girlfriend. This is finally giving her her own plot points separate from just being Peter's ex. So I've got to give Spencer that he's finally doing something with her that isn't just like, you know, being attached at the hip. I don't know why I'm reaching into this thing of binder clips. But also, they were going to follow up on Spencer's Superior Foes run. If you've read Superior Foes, you'll know that Overdrive is most popular from that book, and I just think it was a good use of Spencer to, you know, give characters who aren't tied to Peter as closely as MJ is their own little plot points, while he gives Peter time to focus on the Norman and MJ stuff. I think there are a few too many pages of Norman standing in a room and talking to Kindred, who's trapped in a Dark Force prison, I think. Yeah. And it's weird because it's revealed that Norman... This is kind of a light spoiler. For anyone who hasn't read ASM 56, if you don't want to get spoiled, leave the stream now. Norman was faking being evil again, so he's gone through like 5 different layers of Keikaku so far. So, I'm trying to figure out if he's really a bad guy or not, still. I don't think he is, but I've been fooled before. So, there's a panel that I love, and it's kind of funny, where Kindred's, like, crying as the Dark Force prison's coming over him. He's just like, I'll just shed a little tear. It's great. It's very dramatic, and I think that it... Mark Bagley came back to draw this issue. I wish it was Pat Gleason, but the trade's over, so we gotta go to the next arc, and Bagley's drawn the whole arc so far. Except for maybe 57, because Marcelo Ferreira is drawing an issue, apparently. Going off of previews. So it's weird. I don't know what's going on with that. But 56, A-. Definitely a much better conclusion of Last Remains than what was advertised. So, I don't know why they didn't just advertise that as the last issue. Oh well. Norman learned about Bat-Kek and started to implement his 5,000 IQ Keikaku maneuver. That is true. Bat-Kek was a master planner, and Norman has figured out how to master plan himself. It's a lot of bait to master. Okay. So next up, I need to put this copy of House of X #1 away because it has speculator value, guys. I'm gonna make shit tons of money off of it once Dawn of X is over. Okay, let's see. There we go. Okay. Bat-Kek walks. Storm and Norman could run. Oh. No, Norman flew. Bat-Kek flew the Bat Cop armor so that Storm and Norman could fly as glider. So what next? What next, chat? You want to do Guardians, X-Men, or Iron Man? I'm thinking X-Men, but I'm going to be... Also, if you're buying in the US, supply on bags and boards is becoming expensive. Like, supply is going up in demand, or supply is going down, and demand is still maintaining. So, expect your prices for books to go up if you're buying your stuff in bags. Just a forewarning, because that happened at my store. I'm not sure it was being implemented nationwide, but it should be considered. So X-Men, this was, fuck, I broke the tape on the... Okay, I broke the tape on the bag and board. It's literally broken in half, just like straight at the bag. Okay, I'll tape it later. So this was the supposed follow-up to X of Swords. Really there's big, like, revelations for Krakoa and Arakko following up on X of Swords, but really not a whole lot moves in terms of the plot. Um, I like that we're following up on the Quiet Council. We haven't talked to the Quiet Council in this book in a while, or at least had internal musings without a whole lot of decision. So this is where Hickman shines in the Quiet Council scenes. So with Apocalypse gone, and it's spoilers for X of Swords. Apocalypse went with his wife to go hang out in Araco, I believe, or Oraka. Not on Earth, but it's kind of a big deal because Araco comes into the real world, and they try to merge Krakoa with Araco and make Oraka, but it doesn't work. So meanwhile, they go to Araco and meet with what do they call it? Shit, the Great Ring of Araco, or at least Iska the Unbeaten, who I think is one of the cooler characters to come out of X of Swords. I don't know. These feel like they should be like major revelations. It just feels like the problem is that they got Phil Noto to do the art for this issue. And I like Phil Noto. I like him on Cable, because that's the book where Cable's like a weenie little goofball. But I don't know. It just feels like it doesn't have like the proper gravity. Like, if they got Pepe Larraz, because Pepe Larraz was one of the reasons I loved House of X Powers of 10 so much, and R.B. Silva, and they provided a proper atmosphere for the tone of the book. But here, just because we've associated Phil Noto with weenie goofball Cable, this book just feels like it doesn't have like the proper gravity and tone necessary to make me give a shit about what's going on in it. The dialogue is great. I think Hickman's finally making these characters get their own voice, because part of what made House of X Powers of 10 so weird was that like all the characters spoke the same, but now the characters each have their kind of own voice. I did like that the ending of the issue, and since we're wrapping up, we'll get to spoiler zone in a minute. But I did like the ending. It was a nice twist on how people select their team, and we'll get into that later. But I want to make sure we get to all of the books before we get into the spoiler zone. So we will be pushing the spoiler zone back about 10 minutes to 8:40, or at least until we get done with non-spoiler stuff. So let's talk about Iron Man real quick, because this one, for those of you who are tuning in from Spidey Dude, Scarlet Spider's in this book, guys. Wow, Scarlet Spider. Whoa. Okay. Yeah, Scarlet Spider's in the book. So, and also Frogman. Frogman and Scarlet Spider are the characters everyone came to see if you're a Spider-Man fan. So basically, they're following up on Korvac and trying to figure out what his plan is, and it's basically kind of the same stuff that we've been seeing for a while now, where Iron Man's been chasing down Korvac for a while. Remember Scarlet Spider? I clapped when I saw him. It broke new ground. Anyways, it's basically following up on the same plot points we've been for the last 4 issues. Not a whole lot of action. There's a couple pages of action, but it feels like they took more time to focus on Tony as a character. Again, which is part of a problem I've been having with Iron Man since then. It doesn't feel like a lot is happening. Like, things are happening and the plot is moving along, but the way the story is framed, it just doesn't feel like a whole lot is happening. And it was nice to see like Tony being totally outscaled in power by Korvac, but it feels kind of artificial because now we're just going into space again. Like, going off of the solicits, Iron Man, War Machine, and his friends are all going into space in the next arc. So the power level scaling feels a lot more artificial, even though Korvac is known to sweep Avengers teams even at their best. It feels like the power leveling has become a lot more artificial, so that Tony is forced to be in a much less powerful situation. That said, Kafu is the real genius behind this series. He even when the book hit like a low at number 3, I think was my personal low for the book, and that was even like a B minus. But Kafu has been a consistent plus for this book since day one, and this is the kind of artist you get for an Iron Man book, especially one that harkens back to the grittier street level books. It was nice to see Iron Man going to like the lowest of the low in terms of like characters you can get. I know I'm gonna piss off a Scarlet Spider fan by saying that Scarlet Spider's a low of the low, but realistically, when you have Spider-Man, his carbon copy is like the next best thing. Um, I don't know. I did appreciate that like they're using these lower tier characters and not just like going straight back to the Avengers, especially because they're hogging all the limelight and like King in Black and shit. So it's nice to see these lower tier characters being given some panel time and being used effectively. I wish they had implemented more like power traits. Like if they had shown Scarlet Spider doing some web swinging or stuff. And I just don't know if Kafu didn't have the time to implement that. But I guess that it was just nice to see him. I'm hoping that with this going into space that they actually take him with them. And I'm glad that we got to see a much... Not glad that we got to see a weaker side of Hellcat, but I'm glad that we got to see her be emotionally vulnerable in contrast to what we've seen from her so far in this run. And I know that Hellcat's something of an easy target in terms of not liking because of her run with Kate Leth, which I personally don't like, but I do appreciate Cantwell making her into a foil for Tony, and now she's finally getting now they're finally bouncing back the other way, and that dynamic's having payoff, and they're not just having sex. And issue 4 was not my personal favorite for Cantwell's run, but it's glad that the relationship is finally having a two-way dynamic instead of just Tony doing thing and then Patsy being just the foil, because an obvious foil for Cantwell just to project what he thinks onto Patsy. It's good that their relationship is finally having a two-way dynamic, and I've kind of gone over that a couple times, but I think this is the first issue where Frank Darmada, as the colorist, we're getting a bit more into the technical stuff, and I know Crawl Space Satellites hates me for getting into the technical stuff, but I gotta say, colors and letters are important things that are kind of underutilized or under discussed when it comes to doing this kind of thing. So I've had a very low opinion of Frank Darmada's coloring for this run, and I have a very low opinion of Frank Darmada in general because he does like these weird sickly tones. But it feels like now that we're getting into the grittier bits, this is where Cantwell is getting a chance to shine, and we're getting more into the unnatural coloring, and I think that's where the coloring has shown the most. In addition, it's sort of like David Marquez and Justin Ponser, where Ponser, and I miss him a ton. He was one of the best colorists in the industry for a while. Rest in peace, Mr. Ponser. That sounded really like not caring. That I say that with full sincerity, even though my voice never reflects that. But yeah, this is the first issue where I felt like Darmada wasn't ruining Kafu's art. So good for them. They did it right. Also, I did get a kick out of Iron Man fighting Korvac in a laundromat. So I get a kick out of weird shit. So yeah, I give this solid B+. This is definitely a good end to the... I think this is the end of the first arc. I think it's Books of Korvac, Book 1. And then the next one... And then issue 6 begins the second arc. I don't know. I'm kind of worried that Iron Man's going into space. I'm not going to lie. That's where I've had the most worry so far, is that, like, the appeal of this run was supposed to be Iron Man going, like, back to basics. Back to that very techie or low tech feel, and going back into space kind of reminds me of Bendis's Guardians, so that kind of worries me. But I haven't lost faith in Cantwell enough that I'm planning on ditching it just because of that plot point. So we'll see how it goes, but eyebrow raised. Let's see what happens. And then finally, Guardians of the Galaxy. King in Black tie-in, guys! My life is ruined. Okay. Basically, it ties together King in Black, and this is where Ewing really shines, is, taking a shitty event and, using it to propel the plot points and the inner politics of the cosmic Marvel universe, as well as continue the character dynamics of the internal Guardians of the Galaxy team, where after Star-Lord has come back, the team is finally back in one piece, and I assume they're going to follow up on Gamora from issue 6 not being in the picture. But Knull has very limited presence. Like, he's over on Earth, so no one cares. Yay, pointless tie into line-wide event. No, I'm actually going to give Ewing credit here. He made it... He took the event that I don't care about, and he made me care about how it affects this team. And that's a strength that Ewing has always had when it comes to tying stuff into events, and I'm hoping, because next week is Sword, I'm hoping Ewing follows through on that. I appreciate all the team members got to do something. Juan Cabal's art has been wonderful in terms of showing, in terms of paneling. I think his paneling is wonderful, and it's good that he was made into the first class of the Stormbreakers. But I'm glad that, like, there's a mix of mid-tier characters, but all of them got to do something, and then you got to see Knull basically... Knull works best when he's in the background doing something no one cares about, and, like, soliloquying or monologuing, and then a character just like, I don't care, bang. And that was I think the best part of... I think this is one of the best King in Black tie-ins. And we were talking about it in a private chat with Symbio Bro, who is on Satellites with me, but very good callbacks to Annihilation. And going off of the preview, or going off of the cover for number 11, very deliberate references to Annihilation. So, good work, Ewing. You managed to tie in a trash tier event into your ongoing story and use it to make the characters good. And bring back Star-Lord effectively. So, yay! I do need to get some music in on this stream. If anyone can give me a link to some good copyright-free music, that would be very helpful. We've got another couple minutes until spoiler zone. So, if anyone has anything they want me to talk about, now's your time. I think Guardians... Real quick, I do think Guardians is ending with number 12. I could be wrong, but it would follow the trend of, Guardians being canceled and relaunched with issue 12. So, good on them, I guess. But I probably won't be picking up the next relaunch unless it's Ewing writing again. Where Guardians is becoming like the town bicycle of the Marvel line. So, yeah. It's a very vapid way of looking at it. I do wish they would go back to the TNA look for Star-Lord, but I liked his redesign in this book, so not much to complain about on that front. Okay. Into the other long box you go. Eternals preview. Again, no Bogenrieder Variety Hour next week. That is every 2 weeks because I don't have enough books to justify a Let me check my Google spreadsheets. Okay. I might talk about some other King in Black tie. If I have other King in Black tie-ins to talk about next time because I talk about Sword. So King in Black is perpetually ruining my life. Let's see, January. Next week is Immortal Hulk, another Amazing Spider-Man issue, and Sword. And so, in 2 weeks, we will do another Bogenrieder Variety Hour, and the issues that week will be Amazing Spider-Man number 58, 57, and 58, Immortal Hulk number 42, X-Men number 17, and Sword number 2. Let me check. Is that right on the calendar? So make that 3 weeks. At the end of the month, we'll be talking about those 5 issues, and I want to spread these ones out because I think that just talking about one issue a week is counterproductive. And then after that, we'll be talking about Amazing Spider-Man number 59, Immortal Hulk number 3, Iron Man number 6, Guardians number 11. Sorry, logistics are weird for me. Scheduling is also weird. But come March, we'll have Silk and Beta Ray build to add to our list. So I'll talk about those then. Spoiler zones. I think that let me sort out my poll box real quick. I did promise I'd go for about an hour, so we'll go for an hour. Because I'm a good boy like that. Okay. Since Rising Prelude goes in here. I'm kind of glad, to start with ASM, I'm kind of glad we're going away from the Kindred stuff. I've liked Spencer's take on Kindred since the run started, but we've gone pretty much a full year of just Kindred. We went on hiatus in February because of COVID with the GOG stuff, or was it March? We ended March with the GOG stuff, and then we've spent the rest of the month or the rest of the year tied at the hip to Kindred. And as much as I like Kindred, we almost ran into the same problem that we did with Knull in Donny Cates' Venom, where he's taking up the entirety of the book. So I'm kind of glad we're moving away from that and going into the Kingpin stuff and transitioning away. So yeah, I think that killing... there was people who were thinking that 55... Also, reminder, we are in the spoiler zone now, guys. I think that people who thought that MJ was going to die, I think that fear is justified because, editorial has tortured MJ for the past 5 or 6 years now. Or even since One More Day, so the way you think about 13 years. So I think that fear is somewhat justified, but at the same time, I'm glad they didn't, and that the speculators were proven wrong. So, eBay boys, BTFO'd. Going through this, I'm going on my tablet now because I got the books downloaded on there. I think this issue somewhat proved that the Spider family was somewhat pointless in this book. It could have easily been Kindred, Peter, and MJ, but they felt the need to tie in the Spider family. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't hate the Spider family, but their presence here was somewhat redundant because they just essentially served as a plot point to speculators. Guess you got to inflate prices elsewhere. Yeah, I think that once issue 56 has come out in full, the speculator price will drastically drop, and that's a good thing, I think. I don't know. I did appreciate Peter just going full ham on Kindred. Like, he punches a hole straight through Kindred's face and like an Immortal Hulkish fashion. I I do think that one of the problems I did have with this run was that Spencer or with this arc is that Spencer kind of did like I made jokes earlier about Batkek doing 5,000 layers of Keikaku and Storm and Norman following up on that and learning from him, but it feels like there's the 5 different layers of Keikaku got a little frustrating like 3 tiers in, and it feels like we're kind of playing catch up at this point. It's like, okay, how many is he good or bad now? I don't know, and frankly, I kind of don't care. Um, but the references to Spec 200 and One More Day were somewhat obvious, and the takeaway I think here is that MJ remembers One More Day. So, or at least that's what I'm interpreting. Um, I gotta say, Gleason draws an amazing Green Goblin, but the last couple pages of ASM 55 felt really really rushed because Norman comes pretty much out of like we've seen him in prior pages, but he comes in last minute and he there's like a really frantic fight scene where Peter's like clutching MJ and Kindred and Norman are fighting and like suddenly Dark Force is coming in, wow 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 wow, and like MJ's like, it's okay, trust me, and then it cuts to black. And frankly, I think that was way too quick of an open. It felt like I was reading like a Ben Shapiro novel, or I was like trying to read in like Ben Shapiro ways, and it just felt really rushed and not necessarily sloppy, but it kind of felt like disconjoined. AS56 felt like a much cleaner resolution. I think I mentioned that earlier, but like it follows up on Norman and Kindred's sort of pseudo alliance. Covers a lie, by the way. Kindred and Norman don't team up, or Kingpin and Norman don't team up against Spider-Man. They team up against Kindred, so it's like, okay. Let's say hypothetically that Harry is Kindred, and let's say hypothetically that MJ remembers One More Day. On that assumption, One More Day should be reversed, and Harry should go back to being dead. But again, very good use of Spot. I'm glad Peter and MJ got their reunion. And like there wasn't like a major mega tragedy like MJ dies or Peter loses a limb like we were kind of speculating. But this one finally felt a little less frantic for me, and I think that this should have been the resolution. And looking at the trade because I know that going off of the trade solicits, the Last Remains trade is going to cover ASM 50 to 55. And then the .lr issues are going to be in their own separate companion trade, and then 56 is going to be the start of volume 12. So it's really complicated. And for people who are collecting in trades, it's going to be a good cliffhanger, but this is being more written for people who are reading this issue by issue, like in real time rather than like in retrospect. I do wonder where Norman's sin went, because everyone's sin went back to them, and except Norman and Martin Lee. And I guess that's supposed to be like the big mystery is that Martin Lee is separate from Mr. Negative. I'm trying to remember if that's like a thing that actually works or not with Mr. Negative's lore. But I kind of want to see that plot point followed through, and I know we're getting a follow up in ASM 59. But I am glad that we're getting a follow-up to the Randy Janice storyline. I gotta laugh, mostly because I've made fun of Kiss from a Rose by Seal before. It's a good song, but it has, like, as someone who has watched Who Killed Captain Alex, it has a very weird relationship with me. But I do hope that like after we get past the super suit, the Tron Taskmaster suit, which I totally think is Boomerang LARPing as Spidey. I hope once we resolve that plot point, we move on to the more personal, down to earth stories like the Randy Beetle stuff and Boomerang. you know, I think those are the real meat and potatoes of Spencer's run, and I think that focusing on Kindred too long will negatively impact how receptive I am to further like big mega blockbuster stories in this run. Um, I do think that Bagley's art was a little weird depending on the pages. I think page 31 in the digital version, and not going back. Um, 23. Those are the weird ones. I think it's because I can't tell who's inking those. It definitely looks different in terms of inking. Andrew Hennessy and John Dell. I think Hennessy is the one that does the bad inks, though it could be John Dell, because John Dell was the one who did ASM 45 and 48. And those are the ones with the way rougher inking, so I think that Bagley is the one, or Andrew Hennessy is the one doing the really good inks. I know we're getting to really technical stuff here, people, but this is important for artistic sake. I am glad that MJ didn't die. It's just a smoke bomb. But, like, she gets... So I want to make this a point that I think from someone who has very limited knowledge of how grenades work, that the damage of grenades is not necessarily like, oh, it's just an explosion, but it's like the deployment of like the shrapnel around it, as well as the kinetic blast of tossing someone backwards from a grenade explosion. So I'm surprised that MJ didn't get hurt. Also, for whatever reason, her jacket is really short in one page, and you can see her ass just really pronounced. And that was really weird. I didn't raise questions about it, but it just stuck out to me. I'm like, wait a minute, why is her jacket so short? It's weird. But I did appreciate the character dynamic between Peter, Norman, and Kindred, and I like that all these characters have like these different little webs. Like I need to draw a visual for next session, for next Bogenrieder Variety Hour. But yeah. X-Men, they need to pick up they need to get a better artist. I'm glad Mohammed Azrar is coming back for next issue, because or Brett Booth. I'm not the biggest fan of Brett Booth, but I can take him or leave him. I know he's a pretty controversial figure, but I'm gonna, give him a chance, see what happens, and I'm not gonna pick up X-Men Legends. I'm just gonna pick up that one issue, live with it, for the sake of having it available to talk about. And he's not gonna sell like 120,000 copies, guys. It's not gonna happen. Okay, so just get over it. But like there's things happening. They just need like an artist that can show them happening fast enough that I don't get fucking sleepy. Like, again, I'm gonna cite Pepe Larraz. Pepe Larraz is a fantastic artist, and he's one of the reasons the X of Swords one-shots are worth reading. And I know that, like, we don't like to enable Marvel's obsession with making us read shit, or read extra one-shots, and make, like, this tangled spiral web of books, but there are some books that are justified because I want to support the creators making them, and Pepe Larraz is one of those creators I will support. But they said that Brett Booth and X-Men were raking dollar bills! Dollar bills, baby! Give me that Brett Booth cash money! Do it! I don't think that Brett Booth is gonna make like $1 bajillion for Marvel. I think that's a pipe dream, and that's just what people in denial think. No disrespect to Brett Booth on that part. I'm sure I'm not gonna say anything because I'm gonna piss somebody off with commentary on Brett Booth, but I decided I'm not gonna care. I'm gonna read my book. I will reserve judgment for that issue itself, and we will leave everything else alone. That's what we do on this show. We isolate things and we put them into context later. Like I said with Iron Man, I think that the low tech armor was kind of a mistake to put against Korvac. I do like that they're using like his old Rogues Gallery. Like I think they put in Guardsman in this issue. I need to pull out my bag again. Yeah, I think Guardsman was in this issue, or it was last issue. But like, you've got the controller, who's not just like, you know, mega bad guy, but he's actually like being used effectively. And you got like fucking Unicorn and Blizzard. They're a good use of Iron Man's traditional villains, and using the low tech stakes to, you know, it's a bit artificial, but it works for the sake of, you know, aesthetic as well as tying him down. But that's the problem with going into space, is that like it kind of nullified that plot point. So I don't know what to think on that front. Um, I do think it was a mistake to hold back Immortal Hulk and just, you know, sprint to the finish line, because, you know, I'm kind of waiting for that ending, and I'm glad it's ending soon rather than just like going on perpetually. But we're talking about books that aren't Immortal Hulk. So, Guardians of the Galaxy. We've got 4 minutes left, boys. Let's make it count. Okay, so Guardians of the Galaxy. I appreciate that they kind of gave Star-Lord a power up. I know part of his appeal is like, you know, just funny gunman, but this is kind of like this is kind of like the culmination of all of Ewing's character arcs. Like Moondragon and Phyla are finally like making up about the Moondragon merger. Funny rocket moments. Following up on issue 9 with Peter coming back. Very good use of Nova as sort of like the pseudo team leader. I think that that's been one of the greatest strengths, is like the utilization of Richard Rider leading the Guardians in Star-Lord's absence, or pseudo leading. But this has been sort of like a love letter to the Annihilation characters like Star-Lord and Gamora and Nova, and I think that has been the greatest strength of this book, is that it's sort of like a return to form for the Guardians. Kate's run felt like it was trying to just do more Thanos wank, and it succeeded at that. But I think this feels like much more of a traditional Guardians of the Galaxy run with, you know, newer characters, but it still has the heart of the Abnett Landing run, and that's important. Overall, not a whole lot to say. I know that sounds kind of cheap to go out on, but the books that I'm looking forward to are next week. Like I said in advertising, or the next 2 weeks, Sword, Immortal Hulk, X-Men. We'll talk about X-Men this week, but I don't know. Whoops, open Spotify. Don't want to do that on stream because that's all copyrighted. Yeah, I think that's about it we have for this week. I am planning on picking up some trades, so hopefully when I get them, we'll talk about them. If you can hear like a very loud dog barking, I apologize for that. I don't care, but that's what I'm doing. I'm apologizing. But I have a list of books. I've got a little notepad I wrote them on. Also, parts I'm building for my computer, so I can budget that in. So, the books I want to read: Once in the Future Volume 2 by Gillen and Dan Mora. That's been a consistently good book. I'm planning on supporting it in trade. Firepower by Kirkman and Chris Samney. Tokyo Ghost Volumes 1 and 2. I've never read Tokyo Ghost. I've heard really good things about it, and I know Sean Gore Murphy is something of a pariah for comics right now, but you know, it's Rick Remender and Murphy, and they're both good in their good corners. The Fix. Once I collect all of Spencer and Lieber's The Fix from Image, I plan on reviewing it all in one big retrospective. So that's there, and then I'm thinking of Millar and Murphy's Chrononauts. So let me go to my stock trades wish list. Oh, Arrow Volume 2 came out. Good for them. Account wish list. I also plan on reviewing Ram V and Anand RK's or hang on, how you pronounce this thing? Bidakar. Or no, Anand RK. Sorry. I'm sorry, sir. I misspoke. They're blue and green. Um and then Undiscovered Country, I've had something of a mixed. I've heard good things, and then Black Science by Reminder and Matteo Scalera. So those will be my big boy reviews. While I am talking about single issues on this on this stream, and I do want to talk about more than just Marvel books. The problem is I want to wait until Future State, and Chris and I are talking about Future State over on his stream. So if you're not following Chris, go follow him on Twitch because he does some good. We do a lot of gameplay and comic reviews together, and once I get some DC books I actually care about, I am planning on reviewing those. I do have some Image books that I'm reading right now that I want to read. I just want to make sure I get them legitimately to support those creators. Once in future, I am planning on reviewing in trade format, not because I don't want to review, but because they look good on my shelf. Um, I am reading Homesick Pilots by Dan Waters, and I need to look this guy's name up because I feel bad whenever I'm pronouncing his name wrong. Casper Wujnegard. I'm sorry. I keep butchering this man's name, and he's a wonderful artist, and he's a nice guy, and I want him to succeed. So I'm planning on talking about that book in trade format, Undiscovered Country by Snyder, Soule, and Kevin Coley. And I do have a novel I want to talk about, The High Republic Light of the Jedi. Because that feeds into the High Republic comics series, and I want to finish that book and review it before I go into the comic. So it's a pretty solidly sized hardcover. And I do want to talk about it because I've had very good expectations for Light of the Jedi for a while now because I like Soul, but I think it's best to talk about it in its entirety before I discuss it in full. So we're gonna call it a stream tonight, but thank you for everyone who came in. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, BoobTube. Thank you everyone who is from Spidey Dude that showed up. And we'll see you in 3 weeks to talk. And I will post on my Twitter what books we're recording next time. So everyone have a good night and stay safe. Okay. See you guys later.